Space, a final frontier.
Related around the world, a very specific group of people. They're called Trekkies, aren't they?
Well, they have recently, I have found out they wish to be known as Trekkers.
Trekkers, why is that?
I haven't the faintest.
Well, what, is it possible to define them, or do they come from every kind of walk of life?
Well, I think they come from every walk of life, and some running for life, I think. But I guess they're united by their enthusiasm for Star Trek, and that is the unifying concept. You know, there's a story I'd like to tell you that I know you're not prepared for.
That makes a change.
It does have to do with Trekkies or Trekkers. It doesn't really matter what they're called. They like Star Trek, and I was terribly moved when I heard the story, and I would love to tell it to you. I was being driven someplace to the studio, I think, and the driver turned to me and he said, I asked to get on this assignment because I wanted to meet you. Something happened to me during the Vietnam War, and I wanted to tell you. Now, I was told you would laugh at what I'm going to say, but I wanted to tell you anyway. He said that he had been a soldier in the Special Forces during the Vietnam War, and was captured after 6 months of service, and was put in jail in their ovens. And he said to me that the things you might have seen in Deer Hunter and in Apocalypse Now, it doesn't come anywhere close to the kinds of things that my 10 fellow inmates were subjected to. Water up to the neck for a week, bound hand and foot in a fetal position for a week, and then the worst thing was to be unbound and blood rushing to those muscles, the incredible pain. Is that we were driven to the point of insanity and close to losing our lives, and there was so many of us that had nothing in common. From different states of the Union, different socioeconomic brackets, we had nothing in common except the one thing that we all found that we loved, which was Star Trek. And it sounds funny, but the story itself is not. He said the only way we kept ourselves alive was to play what became known to them as the Star Trek game. The Viet Cong were known as the Klingons. And each soldier would assume another role, Captain Kirk or Mr. Spock or Bones, whatever. And they strived to remember each episode because they were so immersed in Star Trek, these young men, that they could remember episodes dialogue for dialogue, word for word. And they played this game day after day, week after week, and preserved their sanity, and in some cases saved their lives, although some were lost, by playing the Star Trek game. I heard that story and I was so moved. And I realized that as much fun as we have with Trekkies or Trekkers, and I don't disparage anybody's enthusiasm for the show. I lead the enthusiasm, of course, but I couldn't believe that anything as meaningful could happen to an actor in a role as that story that
Yes,
happened to.
quite extraordinary. Do people, though, do the Trekkers, the Trekkies in the extreme cases, do they actually, because you do go along to conferences, conventions, don't you?
I've gone to about a half a dozen.
Yes. Do they actually believe that you are Captain Kirk?
No, I don't think that they've reached that point of insanity. I was on a go-kart place. You have go-karts here?
Yes, right.
And going around in a go-kart with my 3 kids, and I was riding the herd on them. I was protecting my 3 kids because, in addition to the 3 of us on the track, were a number of young wild kids that hopped up on something, and they were whizzing around, and we were going slowly, so I was riding the patriarchal herd. And as we came towards the end of our ride, one of the kids smashed into me as I was in back, just behind my child, and cut my finger, and I was angry, the outraged father. And this was a kid about 19 or 20. He was a violent young man, but I was even more violent. I picked him up and I raced him, and I threw him to the ground. I was insane with anger. And I turned around, and there was 3 other kids coming at me, 3 young, hard-muscled men coming at me. And on the show, I had devised techniques to hit stuntmen. And you can hit a stuntman at great, you can be a foot away from them. As long as they move their head at the right moment, you don't come anywhere near them. Well, I had devised this technique of leaping up into the air and kicking a guy in the chest with both feet. And the stuntman would then reel back, hit a wall, and fall to his sit down, because it was obviously Captain Kirk's blow was overwhelming. Whereas, in fact, it wasn't so. And now these three guys were coming at me, and in that instant, I thought, hey, wait a minute, three guys, I can take that. I can deal with this guy. What I'll do is I'll leap into the air, and I'll hit that guy with both feet. And in that same instant, I realized Newton's law, reaction and opposite reaction. If I hit him with both feet, I'd fall to the ground. And they'd stomp me to death. You know? So I began to talk very quickly and talked my way out of any trouble, bleeding to death at the same time.
But generally, you've enjoyed being Captain Kirk.
Well, I haven't really been Captain Kirk. I was, for 3 years, I played the part of Captain Kirk. In 1970, it was canceled, and in 1979, this movie opportunity comes up, which I took. The intervening years was filled, as actors' years are filled, with many ventures, some of which were notable, some of which were not notable. But I wasn't Captain Kirk for 9 years. I am now, in this period of time, your average Captain Kirk.